the best thing the Bruins can do from now until the end of the season is trade Brad Marchand. And that sucks because he's your captain. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a fan favorite. I love Brad Marchand. He's one of my favorite players ever to play for the Bruins. He's one of the 2 or 3 greatest wingers to ever play for the Bruins with Johnny Busick, and of course Cam Neely. I almost put those 2 players together there in the last name. And who knows if he wants to move, but the Bruins are not going anywhere. All right, they're now under 30% chance to make the playoffs. Right now, they're slotted at the 13th pick in the draft. And if you get rid of some of this dead weight, you can get into the top 10. And that dead weight is not necessarily Marchand. I'm talking about these guys on expirings that you're going to get nothing for, not much in return, right? Carlo, Coyle, not an expiring, but someone like Zaka that you could throw in a deal. Brazeau, get rid of him. And then there's Brad Marchand. And this obviously has all kinds of issues as to whether he's going to want to go, what his no trade list could be. But I think you go to Brad and you say, hey, we're not going anywhere this year or probably the next 2 years after this. Like we're not cup contenders. And we know that you want to finish your career as a Bruin, but hey, you're on an expiring deal here. They probably already have some sort of agreement in place going into next year, the way that they did this year. But you can go and chase a cup with somebody, give us 3 or 4 teams that you're willing to go to. We'll make something happen. We can get something in return for you. And then guess what, man? After the season, we might be able to just bring you back. It's rare, but it happens. Keith Tkachuk did it with the Blues. You just say, hey, go help someone out, and we'll get we'll get a young player and a draft pick in return. And that can help us bolster the future that you might be a part of in the short term at age, 35, 36. And this does stink. I love Brad Marchand, man. That goal he scored in Game 3 in 2011 against Vancouver, that shorthanded goal, is one of my favorite goals in Bruins history. And he scored 2 in Game 7. Like a legend. He will be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He will have his number retired at the Garden. But they don't have a lot of trade pieces right now that are of much value. I mean, those other guys that I mentioned, the Brazeaus, the Coyles, the Carlos, trade them for anything. Carlo could get you something. There are some teams that need some defense help. But I look down the list at these teams that are possible contenders that are looking for wingers / scoring depth at the trade deadline. And that's what Marchand can give you. And I do believe that being a guy who is, not going to be in a captain's role, but also a leadership role, it's not all on his shoulders, and can still play a 3-zone game, can still play some power play and some penalty kill for you. I think that's a very valuable guy, even for someone who hasn't quite produced up to his standard this year. But I look at teams like Colorado is one that gets talked about a lot because he's real close with Nathan MacKinnon. Even after that Rantanen trade, they still need some depth scoring, some depth wing guys. They don't have their first round pick this year, nor do they really have their second round pick to shop because they did just get that in the Rantanen deal. So I doubt that they'll just relinquish their first 2 picks in the draft. But that's something. Dallas is an interesting one that could be a spot for both Carlo and Marchand. So maybe you could swing a big deal there. They might have Heiskanen out for the year. And if they do, I don't think they have any shot at winning the cup, but they will need a defenseman back there. And they're also worried that Tyler Seguin might be out for the year. So boy, what kind of weird symmetry that would be where the Bruins essentially picked to keep Marchand over Seguin in 2013 and traded Seguin to Dallas. That all these years later, it could be sending Marchand down there to to replace Sagan for the short term, because that's a team that still has a cup window, and that Heiskanen injury and how serious it is will certainly determine that for them. They have their first round pick, not their second, but do have their third round pick. And as I detailed earlier this year on the Cam show, after I went to the Bruins' lopsided loss in Dallas, that 7-2 loss, you do know that there's a ton of young talent there. Young guys with plenty of upside and some draft capital that Dallas can ship out. So that's one that's very interesting to me, to see, a winger that's possibly out for the year that you can go out and replace with Brad Marchand. Kings need a winger as well and some depth scoring. They, like Dallas, have their first and third round picks. That Kings team is also pretty close to contending, even for a team that's not gotten out of the first round the last few years. I think they like their shots. I think they're going to be buying at the trade deadline. Minnesota will be buying at the trade deadline. Kirill Kaprizov is out for a significant amount of time. That's a situation where they can go big deal and put Kaprizov on long-term IR, the way that Vegas does all the time, but they need secondary scoring. They have not had that for years. Even with Faber and Kaprizov, that's kind of been the thing that's held them back, is that secondary scoring. They do not have their first round pick, but they do have their second round pick. Columbus would be an interesting one. The darling of the NHL this year. They need some secondary scoring, and they also need some leadership. They guys have not played in the playoffs ever. So wonder what Marchand can bring to them for that. But I think, honestly, everyone talks Colorado. I think the most likely scenario could be Vegas. They need secondary scoring. They need winger help. Marchand and Bruce Cassidy always had a great relationship. The relationship that went sour was Cassidy with the young guys who are no longer on the team, most of them. But Marchand always had a good relationship with him. And Vegas has both their first and second round picks. Not premium picks because they're going to be pretty good. So that might be a case where they're willing to part with a first round pick to get someone like Marchand. I think most of these teams are much more willing to part with a second round pick for Marchand, but in a team like Vegas, you could get a first rounder and or possibly a young player, certainly a second round pick and a young player for Brad Marchand. I think Vegas is a very likely landing spot for Brad Marchand. I think that would make the most sense to me in terms of what the team needs, the relationship that's already there. It's great that Marchand is friends with McKinnon, but the Avs didn't even go to McKinnon before they traded his 100-point winger. They didn't even ask him. They didn't approach him at all. So I doubt that that's a big relationship between, Sakic and McKinnon of like, hey, I'm going to make this move because you like this guy. But here in Vegas, you've got a head coach who wants him, who likes him. That's fascinating to me. Truly is. I wonder just how much he would want. The other one, by the way, is Vancouver. That needs some help. And Vancouver is a dumpster fire right now, but I think they're in a position where they feel like if they could get Miller or Pettersson out of the picture and add a couple guys at the deadline, they could be right back in this thing. But again, just tough sell Marchand to Vancouver for both sides. There's a lot of history there. I doubt that one will happen. But Vegas really jumps off the page to me. And the other reason, real quick before we end things here, the other reason why this could get to a point where Marchand does not mind a trade is, remember the Marty St. Louis exit from Tampa? It wasn't a pretty one. His GM, Steve Yzerman, was also the GM of Team Canada in the 2014 Sochi Olympics. And he controversially did not pick St. Louis, who was having a fantastic year in 13-14. Like he was on pace for like 90 points that year to that point. They ended up putting him on the team as an injury replacement, but that was Martin St. Louis was pissed. He was the captain of the Lightning at the time. He had been a Lightning player forever, and he was pissed and he wanted out. And Tampa was like a fringe playoff team, and he was forcing his way out because there was such a rift between him and the GM. And he eventually got his wish. He got traded to the Rangers. And that helped Tampa because the Rangers made the conference final, which netted them a first-round pick in that deal. Well, Team Canada, the Four Nations, just announced their captains and alternate captains. Brad Marchand was not one of them. The GM of Team Canada is Don Sweeney. Maybe, just maybe, there becomes a rift there. And Marchand says, you know what? You don't want to make me a leadership guy for Team Canada in my last go around wearing that jersey? Then screw. Your team's going nowhere. I'm sick of the drama. I'm sick of the shit. Send me out. There could be some of that. But don't be surprised if Brad Marchand's traded. Now everyone's kind of on board with it. Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts this morning, said this is something that's going to gain some traction here, and teams are going to be calling on Brad Marchand. As much as I love him, I really think that's probably a good move for the organization and its future, and I think Marchand understands that too. And wouldn't stun me at all if he ends up coming back for the last few years of his career. But I think it's something that could really help the long-term future of the Bruins right now. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Most of you watching are not subscribed to the channel. It helps us out a lot. We're very close to 3,000 subscribers, and that's going to help me out a lot and help the channel out a ton. We're bringing you fresh Boston sports content every weekday, live on YouTube, high noon Eastern time, and then the segments on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts. So appreciate you joining in. Have a nice weekend from all of us at The Cam Show.
We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. And if you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter here for some more outrageous Boston sports takes coming to you every weekday at noon Eastern time. And then after that, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Rogue Media Sports.